Alright, hello everybody. My name, of course, is Conman. We've got something slightly different in store today. Rather than one of those long-form videos, we're going to check out, we had a hotfix patch earlier today. It's live right now in North America. I don't know if the patches on EU get slightly delayed. I think it's just the timing. I'm not sure. Either way, the patch right now on North America is live as of today, which is the 31st of May. It's been live for a few hours. It popped a little bit earlier. It's mostly nerfs. There are a couple of bug fixes, mostly some balance issues, some balance things that come into play. Let's take a quick peek. Heyo, I'm just gonna run through these real fast and just kind of give you my hot takes. I sort of glanced at them earlier. I haven't really gone through the full set. They're not too long, so we'll just take a quick look. So we're gonna start off here with Alarak. Level 4, they changed slightly his Chaos Reigns talent at level 4. The bonus damage for hitting 15 heroes is reduced to 50 from 60. The bonus damage for hitting 2 at once is reduced to 50 from 60, excuse me. And then the bonus damage for hitting 3 in one shot is actually increased to 80. So if you're able to hit 3 heroes at once, this actually is then a zero-sum change for you. If you're able to hit that on a consistent basis, then you're fine. In my playing Alarak, since he got changed around, I've really only done the first two. To find the third one a little bit tricky to get. Just, I think if people don't necessarily group up, it's hard to, you know, it can be situational. You got to have an objective where everyone's going to be all up in your face. So from that standpoint, it is going to nerf the damage a little bit. I mean, that's going to be 20 less damage overall, plus, you know, it's going to stack, you know, multiply with the sadism bonuses and whatnot. So it could potentially add up to a chunk of less damage for Alarak. I'm not sure if that's something that he needed or not. Even since the rework, I was looking on hot slogs. He's still only hovering around the mid 40s, the high 40s, depending on your league and where you're playing. So he's still not super overpowered, I guess. I mean, the win rate hasn't shown to me that he's been, like, the people are really running away with him. It's personal opinion. He's got the potential to. I think this change right here is more of it's going to reward more high skill players, definitely, who are able to consistently handle those 3. They also buffed in the level 4 tier. The Show of Force passive slightly increased the damage. I still am not a fan of that one. I still think you're better. You're going, even with the changes here, I still think you're better off with either Chaos Reigns or was it Negatively Charged? I think the other level 4 talent. At 13, we have got the Pure Malice was buffed and Red Recture was slightly reduced. So Pure Malice, they actually made it. They increased the overall buff that you can possibly get, and they made it build up a little bit faster. So it's going to take only 4 ally deaths to go a higher level of sadism as opposed to 5 for a lower amount previously. I think this might have been done just for pick rates. I'm not sure. I think Rakshir was by far and large the better talent. It can stack it, unlike Pure Malice, it can stack indefinitely, and Pure Malice is still lost on death. So you know, it's up to you. I mean, Rakshir's only reduced 1%. I have a feeling if he out overperforms, they might tweak that a little bit more. In most of my games, I'm probably still going to end up with Rakshir, but, you know, your mileage may vary. Cassia was slightly changed. Level 1, Charge Strike, so it only affects you if you ever took Charge Strikes. No longer causes attacks to bounce when attacking structures. I don't know if this made her OP or anything like this. I think this might have just been one of those quality of life changes for people playing against her. You know, there's a lot of, like, you're running away from Cassia and she attacks a wall and she kills you or something like that. I don't know if that was the intended design or not. I can't, you know, speak for Blizzard, but it no longer works that way. So you are going to have to attack something that isn't a structure in order to get the bounce. Ragnaros was nerfed again. Definitely nerfed again. I'm a little surprised. He was when he first was released, he definitely was way OP. And then since then, they've just chunked him down. You know, seems like every patch, something else was nerfed slightly. I thought he was in an okay place. He was still very strong. He wasn't, you know, like a first pick necessarily, or first ban like he was beforehand. He's still up there. He's still a solid selection. Let's see what we did. We've got at level 1 his Q talent. The overall quest completion bonus was reduced by 10. The Q build was probably the most commonly picked, the most consistent build that he had. At 4, Catching Fire was slightly reduced, the regen, and at 13, Cauterizing Wounds, the healing bonus was reduced from 50 to 40%. Just nerfs overall. I don't know how they will I don't know how they'll fill up. I don't know how they'll break down. I suppose that will lower his pick and win rate slightly. I didn't necessarily know if he needed it, but that's just kind of how it ends up. Next up, we've got Samaro. A interesting change to Windwalk, his E ability. The cooldown is increased by 2 seconds to 15, but the duration to compensate is also increased by 2 seconds. So you'll be in your Windwalk, your Windwalk form ability longer. I won't say more often, but longer. But you will have longer periods of cooldown. I think overall this is a nerf to him, because he won't be able to kind of bail out of combat quite as often, something along those lines. I think overall this is a slight nerf. I'm not sure if it's going to really hit him. This is great for people who play Quickmatch and hate Samaro. I'm not a huge Samaro player. Let me know what you think. If you think this is a buff, let me know. I think in the long run this is a slight nerf. I'm not sure what their thought process behind was. I'd actually be pretty curious, but we'll see how that plays out. So Zul'jin has got an interesting one as well. One change: his guillotine can no longer be interrupted once cast the axe is falling. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you take guillotine, that's great. It wasn't a very long cast time to begin with, and the majority of people that I've played against are taking Tazdingo. Again, your mileage may vary. I think if you're taking, here's the way that I feel: if you're taking Tazdingo now, this change isn't going to make you take guillotine. Just personal opinion. I mean, it's a good one. It's a good one if you're Zul'jin, but it's not going to change the way that you approach that. In my thoughts. All right, so we got some specialist changes here. So we've got Probius, Disruption Pulse slightly, just the base damage slightly nerfed. Okay, and Pylon Overcharge, which was one of the ults, they are taken down a notch as well. Probius has been very strong. He came out weak, and they gave him a lot of buffs to kind of boost him up. Now he's been very, very strong. He has a lot of zone control. He can be very disruptive. So I'm curious how that works out. So his base abilities across the board have kind of taken a shot. Level 4, this is a very solidly picked one here. Yes, movement speed bonus was decreased. Level 7 particle accelerator was slightly increased. Okay. The damage cap by 10%. And here's an interesting swap here at 13. Aggressive Matrix. The damage bonus on Aggressive Matrix was increased 25 to 35%. So Aggressive Matrix is the one for auto attack damage, basically basic attack damage when they're in pylon range, while as a shield battery removed, which shields allies that are in that range, that was slightly reduced. I have a feeling that shield battery may have been slightly overperforming based on what I'm seeing, so I think that's an interesting trade. I think in the grand, even though he did get a couple of buffs here at 7 and maybe 13 if you were taking Aggressive Matrix, I think overall it is a slight nerf to Probius. I'm curious how much it's going to bring him down. Here we go here, Tassadar coming up. Basic attack damage increased from 12 to 15. So when Tassadar got reworked, he was super strong, like first pick, first ban material, basically would carry a team by himself. And then he got hit, kind of like Ragnaros with a successive series of nerfs. And now he's way kind of down on the totem, not way down, but he's much further down on the totem pole again. But the funny thing is, it seems like every time they nerf him, they then increase his basic attack damage. And when he was first reworked, his basic attack damage was basically negligible. And the only thing it was good for was slowing people. It was like we called it a tickle beam. So now I don't know. We'll see how that's going to play out. Give him just a little bit more damage. I'm actually interested in his plasma shield and Kala's Embrace. So the base lifesteal is going to be increased, which was a nice chunk. And then with Kala's Embrace, that lifesteal is increased all the way up to 90%. I think that might be an underrated change. I really think that one might sneak by a lot of people. I would be interested in playing that out and seeing how it works. Almost 90% lifesteal could be pretty significant if you're doing a lot of damage. I mean, imagine what that's going to do. Imagine what Kala's Embrace can do to empower, say, like a Vala or a Butcher or an Illidan or any of those melee characters who are just doing a whole bunch of damage all at once. That really could give them a lot of extra sustain. So I'm curious. I think that's going to be an underrated change that really will change the balance levels on some things. So we've got Tyrande here. Shadowstalk was buffed across the board. Cooldown reduced, mana cost reduced. Probably Shadowstalk was underpicked since the change. It doesn't heal anymore, really. It's more just kind of used for the stealthiness and the passive bonuses. So I imagine you'll be allowed to cast this up more often. So I'm curious. I see most people have been taking Starfall, at least in the quick match games I've seen. Level 1, Ranger also increases Sentinel Width. Hunter's Mark, the basic attacks required per decreased from 60 to 50. And then also, here we go at level 7, Huntress Fury, splash damage range increased by roughly 30%. So actually buffs, basically buffs across the board for Tyrande, except for her. I don't know how she's played out. I haven't seen a lot of her in action since the reworks, since they just changed her with Alarak in the most recent patch, in the d.va patch. I didn't play a whole lot of her before, so I have a hard sense of kind of judging where she's been at. The consensus is she does a lot more damage and a lot less healing than before. I don't think these changes are going to change any of that. I am curious how this is gonna affect how she plays. So let me know what you think. Here we go. A Nubrak, the burrow charges cooldown is increased by 2 seconds. That could be. It's not enough to be a huge change, but it definitely is enough to maybe prevent some of those last-minute escapes. Maybe you need to play just a slightly bit more passively if you're a Nubrak now. The movement speed slow and Bed of Barbs at level 4 was kicked down a little bit. Not a huge change, but still a nerf. And then Epicenter. This is a fun one too. Cooldown reduction decreased from 1.5 to 1.25 seconds. So this one was the ability where if you hit people with your burrow in the center, it's going to lower the cooldown. So I mean, think about this. Even if you hit people, even if you somehow manage to hit all 5 heroes with burrow, there's going to be 1.25 more, or 1.25 less cooldown reduction than there was before. Is that enough to make a huge difference to a Nubrak? I don't know. Maybe when it's coupled with the fact that the cooldown is already increased in the patch, maybe that makes the difference. I'm not sure. I think he's still going to be very strong. I don't think he's going to take he's still way up there in the win rates. I don't think he's going to take a huge difference, a huge hit with this, excuse me. I think he'll still be up there. Maybe he'll have to just play that little extra bit more cautiously than he was before. Dahaka did get changed up a little bit. I like these changes. Dark Swarm, the duration was increased a small amount. I think Dark Swarm really hurt him. The changes to him. Brushstalker, the movement speed buff duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds, and the amount increased. And then in level 1, the enhanced agility, the movement speed buff duration increased from 3 to 5. I think this is what he needed, at least with the changes that they were giving him. Before you come out of the brush, you get basically 1 or 2 seconds of movement speed buff. It was crap. I mean, wasn't much, especially on maps that didn't have a whole lot of vents or brushes or bushes or whatever. This is going to make a big difference. This will allow him to pop out. I think this right here gives him the potential to be a very strong ganker. Maybe less of a split pusher, but definitely a strong ganker, where he'll be able to like port in or hide in a bush and then pop out of the bush with a whole lot of speed and be able to grab people and do some damage. d.va did get chunked down a little bit. Let's move this up here. Her boosters, the cooldown was reduced overall by a second. And the cooldown before being able to cancel the ability was decreased from 1 to a half second. Okay. At level 1, hit the nitrous. The movement speed increase was reduced by 50%, and the tooltip was adjusted to reflect the movement speed bonus instead of the total speed. All right. So it will appear 100% slower. It's actually only going to be 50% slower. All right. Not a huge difference. Not a big deal. Still a little bit. Pro moves, passive movement speed duration increased from 1 to 1.25. So I don't know how many people pick that. Let me know. I almost never pick pro moves at level 1. I almost always went one of the other boost abilities. 13 ablative armor reduces the threshold where ablative armor is active from 5 to 4% of d.va's maximum health. Okay. So that's a slight nerf, and here's a slight nerf too. Level 16, Chi-Ji well played, damage bonus reduced from 75 to 50%. That's a big one. So her, previously, if you took, in pilot form, if you took GG well played, you had something like 800 DPS at level 20 in pilot form. You would just literally pew everything. It was crazy good, very surprising damage. If you tried to like 1v1 the pilot, if you didn't blow her up in a few seconds, she would completely destroy you. So let's see the dev comment here. D.va's win rate has risen steadily since release, as most of our new heroes do, and secured her position as the #1 mech nexus. GG, no worry. These adjustments will help boosters feel better to use. All right, I think I can feel with that, and also even out the viability of the talents at level 1. So yeah, that's we're talking about pick rates there. A blade of armor was triggering a lot more often than we thought it should. Fair enough. So D.va decided that we needed to nerf this. Lastly, GG well played was really strong at that tier, so we're tuning down the damage slightly so it isn't always the most pick option. And yeah, it was. It really was. It just did so much damage in pilot form. It was actually an interesting strategy to bail out of your mech or get your mech killed just to be able to do that extra damage. So interesting tweaks to her. I'll see how they play out. I always took GG well played, so that's sad. Makes me sad, but it was very, very strong. ETC got hit as well. He's the last one here. His attack speed base was increased by 1/4 of a second, and aggressive shredding was actually, looks like, nerfed. Cooldown reduction per basic attack reduced from 1 to 0.75 seconds. I'm not sure where he ends up right now. I don't know if that's enough to make a difference to him. His attack speed was not necessarily... I mean, the attack speed bonus slightly will slightly balance out that the fact that cooldown reduction from aggressive shredding, if that's the way that you went, you know, he's still lower on the tank totem pole now thanks to the reworks. You know, he still does provide a lot of CC, so I don't know how this one will ultimately play out either. I'm curious. I mean, I think it gives him a little more offensive ability, at least in terms of damage. You know, straight auto attack damage. Couple of bug fixes as well. I don't think there's anything that's too much of note. Some extra, you know, some extra D.va AI fixes, Discord Strike visual effects, some tooltip stuff. There we go. I like this one right here. Fixed an issue in which Lightning Surge dealt less damage than intended to enemy heroes between Alarak and his primary target. Yay, that's a buff in and of itself. Alriel, after learning Resurrect, Misha and Rexar will no longer generate separate spirits when Rexar is killed. That's nice. Were you able to resurrect Misha? I don't know. I never actually figured out that interaction. Players will now correctly earn takedown credit towards certain hero talents and abilities like Seasoned Marksman or Leeming's Critical Mass after destroying D.va's mech. So that's nice. That's good for consistency. There were a lot of abilities and talents where if you destroyed D.va's mech, you got kill credit for, and there were some abilities here that you didn't get kill credit for, and it wasn't very clearly marked. So it's good to know that they've added that consistency across the board, and that you will get that credit for taking down the mech, just like you would if you did, if you took down Misha. I'm pretty sure you took down Misha. Tyranny, basic attacks against enemy heroes affected by Hunter's Mark that was applied by Celestial Wrath will now correctly splash. There you go. So that's a slight buff too. So yay, bug fixes. Yeah, that's about it. That's all she wrote. Nothing too major. Some nerfs across the board. Looks, except for Tyrande. Good for you. I'm actually gonna, you know, hop out of this and hop into a game with Alarak and see how that works out and see how it looks. Yeah, let me know what you think. Tell me if my hot take is gonna be wrong. I don't know. It's they're small. They're not big changes most off. They're just kind of small tweaks. I will say this before I sign off. I like Blizzard's stance lately of, rather than just completely gutting a character, giving them a lot of smaller nerfs over an extended period of time. You know, over like a week, 2 week, 3 week period of time. Hitting a couple of small nerfs or small changes up or down, giving a week or two to see how they play out, and then maybe adjusting again if they still feel like they haven't hit that mark. I much prefer that than taking a character and going, you're OP, and then just completely gutting them and swinging that pendulum way too far in the other direction. But yeah, that's it. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Let me know what you think. I will hope to see you soon. Once again, my name is Conman. Thanks for watching.